How to tell if a conspiracy is real. Friend. There are a number of ways of telling if a conspiracy is real. The first is the evidence. That's hardly the best. Evidence can be missing, or faked. Just look at the Loch Ness Monster. People are convinced that it exists, when it was hunted and killed in 1822. There won't be anything conclusive revealed for a significant amount of time yet. The second way of telling if a conspiracy is real is to follow the money. This is hard, expensive and time-consuming. Mundane things might have suspicious money movements while true cover-ups might not even involve the movement of a single dollar. Just look at the Knoll incident of '63, by use of disposable agents the truth will be forever kept secret. The third way of telling involves motive. Unless you are telepathic, this will never be a good method. If you are telepathic, then you already know why the numbers 34,613 584 51 46 18 715 413 643 06 have been looping through your mind. The point I am making is that because you don't know who is involved, then you cannot possibly start to bring together the information on who benefits. The final way is crude, quick and effective. It involves a singular question: if this was true, would the great and powerful take steps to deal with it, and if so, do they? My favorite one is the idea that planes are spreading chemicals. When world leaders, military powers and scientists all walk around breathing the same air we all do, it's pretty easy to dismiss. So let me tell you a story. It's a warm story. Class A valve warm. A history of audio amplification can start with record players in the 1930s and 1940s, the first electric phonographs. Previously, records had actuated a needle mechanically connected to a diaphragm, but this was very quiet. When electricity and vacuum tubes started to be commercially viable, an electrical circuit where an input current caused a proportional amount of current to be drawn from a source lead to the first tube amplifiers. These were known as Class A, are very power hungry, and have a highly distorted amplification response. This valve warmth is why the music of the 1960s and 1970s sounds pleasant to many people. Of course, at this time the world was going through significant tension. The rise of counterculture movements based around music such as rock, early metal, early punk started to threaten people. People who needed the populace to act as a singular mass and follow the instructions given. I'm sure if you are an avid reader of this subreddit, then there are stories here that might give you some insight into the failed attempts. Radio waves, subliminal images, light patterns, coded messages. None of this was particularly effective, but it started to bring attention to the problem. I have been working in this area since about this time. It's not hard to get into government projects. A suitably impressive level of work ethic and dedication to the establishment, as well as a lack of moral introspection. I started in private industry with a couple of companies whose operations was electrical chip design. This was the late 70s and early 80s by now. I managed to hit on a number of interesting technological developments in private industry and realized that there were applications that would never be commercially viable. If you haven't realized by now, this story is turning dark. Class D. A Class D amplifier is one where the input signal is compared to a triangular wave generator's signal that is of much higher frequency. This is then used as the input to a power switching stage that provides the amplification. This is an excellent design, as it provides a flat frequency response, sometimes called cold and high electrical efficiency. The sole downside is that the switching brings lots of high frequency electrical noise on the output, past the range of human hearing, but a low pass filter is placed on the output. My work in government offices mostly operated with how this could be exploited, and while I was never involved in the hardware standards that would support this, I was in the software standard development. I was a fundamental author of the MP3 standard, released in 1993. This is a compressed audio waveform that is deliberately designed to have a certain output noise profile when certain input profiles were amplified. Nothing is in the least part remarkable so far, all electronics, standard design and some sounds. Besides, nobody was even hearing the amplified noise profiles. The mid-90s was an interesting time, the last American golden age. It was by now that the hardware had caught up to the standards and some very smart people had come up with desired inputs and outputs. It was found that certain repetitions of 4 harmonics would easily generate amplified noise profiles that suppress the subject's curiosity and willpower. This in itself was not enough to form the cohesive societal grouping that had been desired for 20 years, but the ability to open people to the other methods being employed by the dwindling set of sources of information ensured that people were easily polarized into controllable groups. The final aspect was a method of both controlling the hardware that would be given to the societal subjects and the software inputs to the amplifier so that the new amplifier on a chip circuit's extra features of disabling the low-pass filter could be executed. It came to a head on October 23, 2001, shortly after the event which spawned many conspiracies, but simply overshadowed the real event some 6 weeks later. With a centralized means of distributing music, controlled hardware for playback, and the ability to turn the amplified noise profiles on or off at will, the project was deemed a success. There was a run of approximately 10 years of perfect execution before our opponents got wise and started producing their own versions. By now we had integrated our technologies of a centralized repository whose contents could not be inspected, hardware far beyond what a user could verify, and a set of standards so labyrinthine that following the specifications was all but impossible. The scene got a little complex, but I had a government pension, and was out of active development. I'll let the young guys fight this out with China. You might be asking yourselves why I'm telling you this. Well, time gives the ability to think, and some 40 years have passed and I'm not as okay with silence as I was when I was on the south side of 30. How am I getting away with it? My NDA ran out last week. There's no legal recourse to keep me silent. Do I fear anything illegal? The power that be know that you've all lost. You wouldn't give this technology up. People telling the truth are tolerated when it doesn't affect anything. I know I sound like a crazy old man, but remember what I started this with? Are any of you audio engineers with enough knowledge of psychology and electrical engineering to take apart one of your devices and verify this? Remember, it only executes on certain inputs. Method 1 won't disprove it. Following the money is hard, as I've said, but today, when technology firms have billions sitting overseas, it takes some kind of forensic accountant to link the accounts to companies, let alone make a trail. The motive is clear and easy: governing sheep is easier than governing a nation of thinkers. But there was a final method of telling. The quick and easy damning one. So I ask you, have you ever observed, for absolute certain, any world leader listening to certain tracks at the top of the pop charts on a portable music player?